My name is Clyde Best. I'm originally from Bermuda. I left Bermuda as a 17-year-old to go play professional soccer in England, and at a club like West Ham United, who had 3 World Cup players at the time, Bobby Moore, Jefferson, Martin Peters.
Football history is full of stories about brutal tackles, fiery derbies, and infamous on-pitch brawls, but some of the hardest fights in the game never involved fists, referees, or red cards. They happened in silence, in the mind, in the tunnel, in the stands. This is the story of Clyde Best, a Bermudian football legend whose greatest battle wasn't against defenders, but against racism itself. If you appreciate deep stories about football legends who shaped the game beyond the pitch, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Legend Play, a man who walked into English football at a time when simply being black was considered an act of defiance. This is not a story about one bad moment. This is the story of a lifetime of From Bermuda to England, an unlikely journey. Clyde Best was born in Bermuda, far away from the floodlights and roaring crowds of English football. At a time when very few black players were even considered by English clubs, Best's talent forced people to look beyond their prejudices even if they didn't accept him. In the late 1960s, English football was not ready for players like Clyde Best. There were no diversity campaigns, no anti-racism armbands, no social media outcry. Abuse was normalized. Silence was expected, and survival depended on mental strength more than physical ability. West Ham United took a chance on an 18-year-old Clyde Best, and in 1968, he made his first team debut. Just stepping onto the pitch made him a pioneer. Best wasn't just another young prospect. He was one of the very few black players in top-flight English football. Every away ground felt hostile. Every touch of the ball came with extra scrutiny. He wasn't allowed to just be average. He had to be strong. He had to be better. He had to prove he belonged. On the pitch, Clyde Best was a formidable striker. He was powerful, intelligent, and dominant in the air. Defenders struggled with his physical presence, and fans quickly recognized his value. Over 8 seasons with West Ham United, Best scored 58 goals in 218 appearances. These were not just statistics, they were statements. Every goal was a response. Every celebration was resistance. He became a fan favorite not because of sympathy, but because of performance. But away from Upton Park, the reality was brutal. Racist chanting followed him everywhere. Monkey noises echoed from the stands. Bananas and peanuts were thrown onto the pitch. Abuse wasn't hidden, it was loud, public, and relentless. Opposition fans didn't just want to distract Clyde Best, they wanted to humiliate him, break him, push him into reacting so he could be punished for their hatred. The acid test, a threat beyond FOTBL. The darkest moment of Best's career didn't come from a tackle or a confrontation on the pitch. It came in the form of an anonymous letter, delivered to West Ham's training ground. The message was chilling, a threat to throw acid in his face as he emerged from the tunnel for a game. This was not football banter. This was attempted terror. A reminder that the hatred went far beyond 90 minutes. Why the acid test mattered. Clyde Best later named his autobiography The Acid Test. Not for shock value, but to capture the reality of what he endured. Every match was a test. Every season was a test. How much abuse could one man take before breaking? The threat symbolized the extreme danger black players faced simply by existing in English football at the time. And yet, Best kept playing. The hardest part, staying silent. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Clyde Best's career is not what he did, but what he didn't do. Despite the constant provocation, he was never sent off. He refused to react. He understood that one moment of anger could be used to justify everything they said about him. His response was discipline, focus, goals. The best way to silence them. Best once said that. The best way to silence racist abuse was simple. Score. Goals. And that philosophy defined his career. When the noise grew louder, he played harder. When the abuse intensified, he rose above it. He turned hatred into fuel and pressure into purpose. In doing so, he became more than just a footballer. He became a symbol of resistance. The weight of representation. Clyde Best didn't just play for himself. Whether he wanted it or not, he represented every black player who would come after him. There was no safety net. If he failed, critics would say black players weren't good enough. If he reacted, they would say they weren't disciplined enough. The margin for error was zero. Life after West Ham, a new CHPT. After leaving West Ham in 1976, Best found a different footballing world in the North American Soccer League. In the United States, the atmosphere was less hostile and the game was growing fast. Playing for clubs like the Portland Timbers and the Tampa Bay Rowdies, Best rediscovered joy in football. In 1975, he won the Soccer Bowl, adding a major trophy to his career. A legacy beyond trophies. Clyde Best's legacy isn't measured only in goals or silverware. It's measured in doors opened, in barriers broken, in the courage it took to endure hatred without becoming bitter. Players like Ian Wright, Rio Ferdinand, and countless others walked paths made possible by pioneers like Best. Why his story still matters today. Football speaks openly about racism. Campaigns exist, punishments are issued, but those conversations were made possible by men who suffered in silence decades earlier. Clyde Best didn't have hashtags or headlines defending him. He had resilience. His fight wasn't visible on highlight reels, but it changed the game forever. Clyde Best never threw a punch, never sparked a mass brawl, never made headlines for violence. Yet he fought one of the hardest battles football has ever seen, and one story reminds us that courage isn't always loud, and strength isn't always aggressive. Sometimes, the bravest thing a player can do is simply keep walking out of the tunnel. If you appreciate deep stories about football legends who shaped the game beyond the pitch, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Legend Play, because some legends aren't remembered for the fights they started, but for the ones they survived. Football history is full of stories about brutal tackles, fiery derbies, and infamous on-pitch brawls, but some of the hardest fights in the game never involved fists, referees, or red cards. They happened in silence, in the mind, in the tunnel, in the stands. This is the story of Clyde Best, a Bermudian football legend whose greatest battle wasn't against defenders, but against racism itself. If you appreciate deep stories about football legends who shaped the game beyond the pitch, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Legend Play, a man who walked into English football at a time when simply being black was considered an act of defiance. This is not a story about one bad moment. This is the story of a lifetime of From Bermuda to England, an unlikely journey. Clyde Best was born in Bermuda, far away from the floodlights and roaring crowds of English football. At a time when very few black players were even considered by English clubs, Best's talent forced people to look beyond their prejudices even if they didn't accept him. In the late 1960s, English football was not ready for players like Clyde Best. There were no diversity campaigns, no anti-racism armbands, no social media outcry. Abuse was normalized, silence was expected, and survival depended on mental strength more than physical ability. West Ham United took a chance on an 18-year-old Clyde Best, and in 1968, he made his first team debut. Just stepping onto the pitch made him a pioneer. Best wasn't just another young prospect. He was one of the very few black players in top-flight English football. Every away ground felt hostile. Every touch of the ball came with extra scrutiny. He wasn't allowed to just be average. He had to be strong. He had to be better. He had to prove he belonged. On the pitch, Clyde Best was a formidable striker. He was powerful, intelligent, and dominant in the air. Defenders struggled with his physical presence, and fans quickly recognized his value. Over 8 seasons with West Ham United, Best scored 58 goals in 218 appearances. These were not just statistics, they were statements. Every goal was a response. Every celebration was resistance. He became a fan favorite not because of sympathy, but because of performance. But away from Upton Park, the reality was brutal. Racist chanting followed him everywhere. Monkey noises echoed from the stands. Bananas and peanuts were thrown onto the pitch. Abuse wasn't hidden, it was loud, public, and relentless. Opposition fans didn't just want to distract Clyde Best, they wanted to humiliate him, break him, push him into reacting so he could be punished for their hatred. The acid test, a threat beyond FOTBL. The darkest moment of Best's career didn't come from a tackle or a confrontation on the pitch. It came in the form of an anonymous letter, delivered to West Ham's training ground. The message was chilling, a threat to throw acid in his face as he emerged from the tunnel for a game. This was not football banter. This was attempted terror. A reminder that the hatred went far beyond 90 minutes. Why the acid test mattered. Clyde Best later named his autobiography The Acid Test. Not for shock value, but to capture the reality of what he endured. Every match was a test. Every season was a test. How much abuse could one man take before breaking? The threat symbolized the extreme danger black players faced simply by existing in English football at the time. And yet, Best kept playing. The hardest part, staying silent. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Clyde Best's career is not what he did, but what he didn't do. Despite the constant provocation, he was never sent off. He refused to react. He understood that one moment of anger could be used to justify everything they said about him. His response was discipline, focus, goals. The best way to silence them. Best once said that. The best way to silence racist abuse was simple. Score. Goals. And that philosophy defined his career. When the noise grew louder, he played harder. When the abuse intensified, he rose above it. He turned hatred into fuel and pressure into purpose. In doing so, he became more than just a footballer. He became a symbol of resistance. The weight of representation. Clyde Best didn't just play for himself. Whether he wanted it or not, he represented every black player who would come after him. There was no safety net. If he failed, critics would say black players weren't good enough. If he reacted, they would say they weren't disciplined enough. The margin for error was zero. Life after West Ham, a new CHPT, or after leaving West Ham in 1976. Best found a different footballing world in the North American Soccer League. In the United States, the atmosphere was less hostile and the game was growing fast. Playing for clubs like the Portland Timbers and the Tampa Bay Rowdies, Best rediscovered joy in football. In 1975, he won the Soccer Bowl, adding a major trophy to his career. A legacy beyond trophies. Clyde Best's legacy isn't measured only in goals or silverware. It's measured in doors opened, in barriers broken, in the courage it took to endure hatred without becoming bitter. Players like Ian Wright, Rio Ferdinand, and countless others walked paths made possible by pioneers like Best. Why his story still matters today. Football speaks openly about racism. Campaigns exist, punishments are issued, but those conversations were made possible by men who suffered in silence decades earlier. Clyde Best didn't have hashtags or headlines defending him. He had resilience. His fight wasn't visible on highlight reels, but it changed the game forever. Clyde Best never threw a punch, never sparked a mass brawl, never made headlines for violence. Yet he fought one of the hardest battles football has ever seen, and one story reminds us that courage isn't always loud, and strength isn't always aggressive. Sometimes, the bravest thing a player can do is simply keep walking out of the tunnel. If you appreciate deep stories about football legends who shaped the game beyond the pitch, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Legend Play, because some legends aren't remembered for the fights they started, but for the ones they survived.
We're highlighting from a black perspective the elite aspect of discrimination in terms of either black footballers, black actors not getting Oscars. And I also look at it from an intersectional point of view in terms of from a female point of view or gay point of view about women not being able to get Oscars. You look at the Harvey Weinstein case, for example. Tarana Burke started the Me Too movement about young black girls in the inner cities who were sexually abused. It then got hijacked to then become about Hollywood actresses and Harvey Weinstein.
John Barnes' most challenging career moments primarily stem from his ill-fated managerial career, a crucial title-deciding era as a player, and the highly publicized financial struggles he faced after retirement. Despite his brilliance on the pitch, these setbacks created emotional chapters that shaped the depth of his story. Barnes, known for elegance and control as a footballer, found himself battling frustrations later in life. Each challenge tested him in different ways, revealing a resilience not always seen during his playing days. These hardships added complexity to a man often remembered only for his talent. His journey blended triumph with unexpected adversity. Barnes entered management with great expectations, carrying the aura of a former superstar stepping into leadership. Yet success proved far more elusive than during his time as a player, and promising opportunities quickly turned difficult. At Celtic, he faced internal tension, disappointing results, and a lack of support that hindered his progress. A shocking cup defeat accelerated his dismissal, marking an early and painful setback. The experience left Barnes questioning the path he had chosen. It became a defining low point of his post-playing career. His later managerial spell at Tranmere Rovers also brought challenges, as performances failed to match the pressure he faced. Barnes struggled to implement his philosophy with limited resources, leading to poor results and early termination. Critics viewed these failures harshly, overshadowing his accomplishments as a player. The frustration of unfulfilled managerial ambitions weighed heavily on him. For Barnes, these disappointments became reminders of football's unforgiving nature. They marked the stark contrast between his iconic playing career and his turbulent coaching journey. Even during his playing years, Barnes endured moments that haunted him long after retirement. One of the most painful was a costly error in a title-deciding match, an uncharacteristic slip that carried heavy consequences, though he had delivered years of brilliance. This single moment drew intense scrutiny from fans and media alike. Barnes acknowledged the mistake as one of the hardest he faced emotionally. It became an unwanted blemish on an otherwise extraordinary record. The incident followed him 4 years due to the magnitude of the match involved. After retiring, Barnes faced more personal struggles as financial difficulties became public knowledge. Business ventures collapsed, investments failed, and debts accumulated. Drawing uncomfortable media attention, the pressure of these challenges added strain to his post-football life. Barnes spoke openly about the emotional toll, highlighting how quickly stability can disappear. The vulnerability he showed earned him sympathy and understanding from many supporters. These hardships created another difficult chapter in his journey beyond the pitch. Through it all, Barnes remained determined to rebuild and redefine himself despite the setbacks that shaped his later years. Each obstacle revealed a man willing to confront adversity head-on, rather than hide from it. His struggles added humanity to a career often defined by flair, creativity, and excellence. Fans came to appreciate not only his footballing genius, but also his honesty about hardship. Barnes' story became richer through the challenges he endured. These moments laid the foundation for a powerful, multifaceted legacy. Celtic marked the beginning of John Barnes' managerial difficulties, arriving with high expectations but ending in abrupt disappointment. Appointed in 1999 with hopes of introducing fresh ideas, he faced internal challenges almost immediately. The team struggled to adapt to his style, creating tension on and off the pitch. Results worsened as pressure mounted, leaving Barnes in an increasingly fragile position. The Scottish Cup defeat to Inverness Caledonian Thistle became the breaking point. It cemented his exit just 8 months after his arrival. The 3-1 loss against Inverness Caledonian Thistle was one of the most shocking upsets in Celtic's modern history. Fans and media reacted with disbelief as the second-tier side dominated the match. The famous headline, "Super KE go ballistic, Celtic are atrocious," reflected the national humiliation of the result. Barnes felt the full weight of responsibility fall onto his shoulders. The defeat overshadowed any progress he hoped to build. It became the defining moment of his short and painful Celtic tenure. For Barnes, the dismissal brought emotional and professional consequences that lingered long after the headlines faded. His first major job had ended in dramatic failure, damaging the reputation he carried from his playing days. Critics questioned his leadership, tactical approach, and readiness for top-level management. Barnes defended his efforts but acknowledged the challenges he faced behind the scenes. The experience left him wary of how quickly narratives can shift. It marked the beginning of a difficult chapter in his post-playing career. His move to Tranmere Rovers years later offered a second chance at management, but it proved even more difficult. Appointed in 2009, he entered a club with limited resources and growing expectations. The squad struggled to adapt to his passing philosophy, leading to early inconsistencies. Results quickly spiraled, placing Barnes under immediate scrutiny. Only 2 wins from 11 league games sealed his fate. The project collapsed before it ever had a chance to grow. The termination at Tranmere was deeply frustrating for Barnes, who felt he was never given enough time. Critics labeled the stint as further evidence of managerial shortcomings. Supporters of the club, desperate for stability, saw little improvement under his leadership. Barnes insisted the environment lacked the tools needed for success, making progress nearly impossible. Regardless, the outcome added to the growing perception of managerial failure. It pushed him further away from future opportunities in English football. The 2 unsuccessful spells made management one of Barnes' most challenging career arenas. They contrasted sharply with the confidence and control he exuded as a player. Each dismissal chipped away at the legacy he had built during his playing years. Barnes often reflected on the unpredictable nature of coaching and the different pressures it carried. He emphasized how little patience managers are afforded compared to players. The experiences shaped his understanding of football politics and expectations. Beyond management, Barnes faced one of his most painful playing memories in the 1989 league title decider. Liverpool held a 1-0 deficit against Arsenal, a scoreline still enough to secure the league title. In the final minute, Barnes gained possession. Liverpool only needed to keep the ball. Instead of taking it to the corner flag, he attempted to attack the goal. He was dispossessed by Kevin Richardson, a moment that shifted the match's destiny entirely. It became one of the most scrutinized decisions of his career. Arsenal transitioned instantly from Barnes' turnover, creating a counter-attack that stunned the football world. Michael Thomas surged forward, scoring the decisive goal that snatched the title away from Liverpool. The stadium fell silent as Arsenal celebrated a historic triumph. Barnes felt the weight of the moment with crushing force. The era haunted him for years. Often resurfacing in discussions of Liverpool's near misses, it became an enduring chapter in one of football's most dramatic finals. For Barnes, the 1989 incident was more than a tactical mistake, it was a personal wound. Despite seasons of brilliance, the moment became a talking point that critics replayed endlessly. He acknowledged the error and its consequences with honesty, accepting the burden it placed on him. Supporters debated whether the responsibility truly rested on his shoulders, yet Barnes himself carried the guilt long after the final whistle. It became a reminder that even great players face defining moments of regret. The scrutiny that followed placed emotional strain on Barnes, who had built a reputation for creativity and intelligence on the pitch, while teammates and managers stood by him. Public memory often narrowed in on the mistake. Barnes understood that football's harshest judgments fall on its biggest stars. His resilience in facing the criticism became part of his character. Instead of hiding from the moment, he addressed it openly. That honesty deepened fans' respect in the long run. Off the pitch, Barnes encountered even greater challenges through severe financial difficulties after retirement. Business ventures he pursued failed to deliver success, leading to increasing debts. John Barnes Media Limited, his primary company, went into liquidation with debts exceeding £1.5 million. Much of the amount was owed to HMRC, which added legal complications. The scale of the financial fallout drew widespread media attention. Barnes was thrust into headlines for reasons unrelated to football. A 2023 investigation revealed that the company failed to pay nearly £200,000 in taxes, resulting in strict consequences. Barnes received a 3.5-year ban from serving as a company director. The news intensified scrutiny on his financial management and business decisions. He faced further embarrassment as additional details emerged. The restrictions added stability challenges to an already difficult financial landscape. It marked another painful moment in his post-football life. Barnes also faced multiple personal bankruptcy petitions dating back to 2010, adding further strain to his public image. Each case brought renewed attention to his financial troubles. He admitted his younger self spent freely, not anticipating long-term consequences. These revelations highlighted the pressures athletes face when transitioning out of sports. Barnes became an example of how quickly fortunes can fade after retirement. The experience humbled him deeply. Through the turmoil, Barnes expressed regret, but also used his platform to educate others. He spoke candidly about financial literacy and the lessons he learned. His ability to confront mistakes publicly demonstrated maturity and transparency. Supporters appreciated his willingness to address issues that many former athletes hide. The honesty added another layer to his evolving legacy. It showed growth born from hardship. Despite the setbacks, Barnes maintained a presence in football culture as a pundit, speaker, and ambassador. His insights reflected not only knowledge but life experience tempered by adversity. He offered perspectives shaped by both triumph and failure. Fans responded to his authenticity, valuing the honesty he brought to discussions. Barnes' challenges made him more relatable to the public. He emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. Every major setback Barnes experienced on the pitch, on the touchline, and in his personal life shaped a story far more complex than his highlight reels suggest. His journey illustrates how even most gifted athletes confront real struggles beyond the roar of the crowd. Barnes faced each obstacle with resilience, whether through reflection or rebuilding. His story reminds fans that legends are human too. The difficult chapters deepen the meaning of his success. His legacy continues to evolve through both triumph and trial, Ultimately, Barnes' challenging moments define not weakness but the depth of his character. His setbacks reveal a willingness to confront failure, learn from it, and keep moving forward. They provide balance to the iconic moments that shaped his playing career. Barnes' resilience continues to inspire those who face their own obstacles. He stands as a reminder that greatness is not measured only by victories. His journey shows strength even when the world feels unforgiving. John Barnes' story is a testament to resilience, courage, and the ability to face challenges head-on. From managerial setbacks to unforgettable moments on the pitch, his career reflects both triumph and adversity. Every obstacle he encountered revealed the determination behind his legendary talent. Fans admire not just his skill, but his honesty in addressing failures. His journey inspires young athletes to embrace both victories and setbacks. Barnes' legacy is a reminder that true greatness encompasses more than just statistics. Despite setbacks at Celtic and Tranmere Rovers, Barnes showed perseverance in the face of public scrutiny. He refused to let failure define him and continued to contribute to football in meaningful ways. His experiences highlight the pressures of management. Compared to playing, each disappointment became a lesson in resilience and adaptation. Supporters came to respect his courage as much as his skill. These challenges made his story richer, more human, and relatable to fans worldwide. Even the painful moments, like the 1989 title-deciding error, shaped his growth as a player and public figure. Barnes faced criticism head-on and spoke openly about the emotional impact. These experiences demonstrated humility and self-awareness rarely seen at the highest levels. They allowed him to connect with fans on a deeper level. His honesty turned personal mistakes into lessons for others. Barnes' career remains an inspiring mix of brilliance and vulnerability. Barnes' post-retirement struggles, including financial difficulties, highlight the challenges athletes face after their playing days. He shared his experiences publicly, educating others about financial responsibility and planning. His willingness to confront hardships openly strengthened his credibility and relatability. These chapters show that even legends must navigate life's unexpected trials. Barnes' story demonstrates that setbacks do not erase achievement. They simply add layers to a life fully lived in football, through every high and low. John Barnes has remained a respected figure in football. His insights as a pundit, mentor, and advocate reflect his enduring love for the game. Fans remember him for the goals, flair, and inspiration he provided on and off the pitch. Even after challenges, he continues to contribute meaningfully to the sport. His journey is a lesson in perseverance, resilience, and growth. Barnes' story proves that legacy is built through both talent and character. Thank you for watching this tribute to John Barnes, a football icon whose career spans triumph, challenge, and resilience. If you enjoyed this script and want more inspiring football stories, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. Your support helps keep football history alive and celebrated. Barnes' story reminds us all of the power of talent combined with perseverance. More legendary stories and deep dives are coming your way.
Because I remember when I was playing against Liverpool, the mighty Reds, and somebody had said a racist remark. Somebody, well, I'll say his name if that's all right. Is that all right? Kenny Dalglish. Kenny, out of everybody, upper Scotland. I mean, he said some bad things, and I accepted it. But when I got off the pitch, I just wanted to break everything there. I felt so angry. I now wanted to go back and I wanted to fight him. And, at the end of the day, I realized that don't get angry. Best thing to do is to laugh and smile and walk away. Make friends, don't make enemies. That's how I handled that situation. Some say it was right, some say it was wrong.
John Fashanu, a prominent black footballer in the 1980s and 1990s, faced relentless racial abuse throughout his career. And before we dive deeper, make sure to like and subscribe for more powerful football stories. His journey reflects a harsh era in English football where racism was openly expressed by fans and, at times, shockingly tolerated. And despite his talent and physical dominance, Fashanu was often judged by his skin color rather than his performances. The abuse he endured went far beyond normal criticism and became a constant psychological battle. Stadiums were hostile environments for black players during this period. Fashanu's career unfolded under intense pressure few today can fully imagine. From monkey chants to racist slurs thrown from the stands, Fashanu regularly endured dehumanizing treatment on match days. Opposition fans targeted him not just to distract him but to humiliate and intimidate him publicly. These moments were rarely punished by authorities, which allowed such behavior to continue unchecked. The lack of strong action from football governing bodies sent a message that racism was part of the game. For players like Fashanu, silence from officials hurt almost as much as the abuse itself. He was expected to perform while absorbing hatred week after week. Racism was not limited to opposition supporters, as Fashanu later revealed that he also faced discrimination from within the football community. Some teammates and staff made racially insensitive remarks, creating an environment where he never truly felt safe or respected. Being isolated inside your own dressing room took a heavy emotional toll. These experiences show that racism in football was deeply rooted, not just a problem in the stands. Fashanu often felt he had to prove himself more than others just to be treated equally. That constant pressure shaped both his career and personality. The media also played a damaging role during this era, often portraying black players using stereotypes rather than focusing on their skill. Fashanu was sometimes labeled as aggressive or problematic, reinforcing racial bias in public perception. These narratives influenced how fans and clubs viewed him. Instead of celebrating his strength and goal-scoring ability, criticism was magnified. Such coverage contributed to a culture where black players were scrutinized more harshly. It added another layer of injustice to an already difficult career. Despite everything, Fashanu enjoyed success at clubs like Wimbledon, where he was a key figure during their famous FA Cup run. His performances proved his quality and resilience in the face of constant adversity. He refused to be silenced or driven out of the game by racism. Each goal and strong display became an act of defiance. His presence on the pitch challenged stereotypes and forced people to confront their biases. Success did not erase the abuse, but it showed his mental strength. After his playing career, Fashanu became more vocal about the racism he experienced, refusing to let those stories be forgotten. He spoke openly about the damage racism caused to players' mental health. His honesty helped shed light on issues many suffered in silence. By sharing his experiences, he contributed to conversations that pushed football toward change. His voice mattered at a time when few former players were willing to speak out. This bravery extended beyond the pitch. John Fashanu's story is a reminder of how far football has come and how far it still needs to go. His experiences exposed the ugly reality of racism that shaped English football for decades. While today's game is more diverse and aware, his struggles should never be ignored or minimized. Remembering players like Fashanu honors those who endured abuse so future generations would not. His legacy is not just about goals and machas but about resilience and truth. It stands as a powerful lesson in football history. When John Fashanu signed for Millwall FC in 1984, he walked straight into one of the most hostile environments in English football. The club's supporters were notorious for their racism and made it clear he was not welcome. From his earliest appearances, he was subjected to relentless abuse from the stands. This abuse was not subtle or occasional, but constant and aggressive. It followed him every time he stepped onto the pitch. Millwall became the setting for some of the worst racism he would face. One of the most shocking aspects of his time at Millwall was the throwing of bananas from the crowd. These acts were deliberately humiliating and intended to dehumanize him. Alongside this, Fashanu received death threats that went far beyond football rivalry. The atmosphere was one of intimidation rather than support. Such behavior was often ignored or normalized during that era. It left players like Fashanu feeling exposed and unprotected. Millwall fans even had a semi-official chant that embodied their defiance and insularity. The chant symbolized a culture that rejected outsiders, especially black players. Hearing thousands of voices united in hostility was psychologically draining. It reinforced the idea that racism was embedded within parts of football culture. For Fashanu, this was not just noise, but a constant reminder of exclusion. And the chant echoed the wider acceptance of racist attitudes at the time. The abuse did not end in the stands, as hostility also existed inside the club. Fashanu later revealed that some of his own teammates were against him when he arrived. Instead of support, he faced isolation within the dressing room. This betrayal hurt deeply because teammates are supposed to be a source of unity. It showed that racism was not just external, it was present behind closed doors as well. One particularly disturbing incident involved his clothes being covered in black spray paint in the changing room. This act was deliberately symbolic and deeply offensive. It was meant to mock his skin color and assert dominance. Such behavior created a toxic environment that made daily work unbearable. Fashanu had to endure this without meaningful intervention. The incident stayed with him long after his playing days. Another defining moment occurred during a match at Goodison Park as Fashanu went to take a throw-in. He was racially abused by 3 young boys in the crowd. They were only 7 or 8 years old, yet they were repeating hateful language. What disturbed him most was not just the words. It was the realization of how early racism was being taught. Even more upsetting was the reaction of the adults with those children. Their father and uncle were present and laughing as the abuse continued. This moment highlighted how racism was passed down through generations. It was no longer just about football fans losing control. It was about values being normalized within families for Fashanu. This incident cut deeply. Fashanu reacted strongly to what happened at Goodison Park. He reported the incident to the police, making a clear statement that such behavior was unacceptable. At the time, this was a rare and bold move for a footballer. Most players were expected to stay silent and move on. His reaction showed how seriously he took the issue. Although he chose not to press charges, he still wanted accountability. Instead, he requested that the police speak directly to the families involved. His aim was education rather than punishment. He hoped to stop the cycle of abuse from continuing. This decision reflected his understanding of the deeper roots of racism and also showed restraint and responsibility. Beyond these specific incidents, Fashanu endured general abuse at countless matches. Swearing and spitting were common occurrences directed at him. Monkey impersonations and racist chants rang out from the terraces. These acts were designed to break him mentally. They created an atmosphere of constant hostility wherever he played. Fashanu noted that the abuse was often worse when playing against teams from the north of England. Certain stadiums had reputations for extreme behavior. Players knew in advance which matches would be the hardest to endure. This anticipation added to the mental strain. It meant preparing not just physically, but emotionally. The roots of this trauma went back even further to his childhood. Growing up in Norwich, John and his brother Justin were among the only black children in the area. They experienced what Fashanu described as pretty heavy racial abuse. This included name and social exclusion. Racism was a part of their lives long before professional football. These early experiences shaped how both brothers viewed the world. Constant abuse affected their confidence and sense of belonging. It also hardened them at a young age. Football became both an escape and another battleground. The pain they carried into adulthood was deeply ingrained. The long-term impact of racism pushed Fashanu to take action beyond playing. He became a founder member of the anti-racism campaign, Kick It Out. The organization aimed to challenge discrimination across football. His involvement came from lived experience, not theory. He wanted to ensure future players faced less abuse. Kick It Out became a platform to confront behavior that had been ignored for decades. Fashanu's voice added credibility and urgency to the campaign. He understood how silence had allowed racism. So thrice speaking out was his way of breaking that cycle. It marked a shift from suffering to resistance. In later years, Fashanu continued to speak openly about his experiences. On shows like Celebrity SAS, he discussed the lasting emotional damage caused by racism. He also spoke about how it affected his family. His reflections were raw and deeply personal. He paid particular attention to the impact racism had on his brother Justin. The abuse they endured together left scars that never fully healed. By sharing these stories publicly, Fashanu ensured they would not be forgotten. His honesty forced uncomfortable conversations. It remains a powerful reminder of football's troubled past. John Fashanu's story stands as a powerful reminder of the strength required to survive in an era where racism was openly tolerated in football. His experiences were not isolated moments, but part of a wider culture that harmed countless players. Remembering his journey helps ensure those struggles are not erased. It also reminds fans why accountability matters. His resilience deserves recognition beyond statistics and trophies. His voice still echoes today. The racism Fashanu endured shaped his life both on and off the pitch. While he achieved success, the emotional toll was immense and long-lasting. His willingness to speak openly has helped expose truths many preferred to ignore. These stories force football to confront its past honestly. Progress begins with acknowledgement. Fashanu played a key role in that process. What makes his story even more impactful is how early racism entered his life. From childhood to professional football, the abuse never fully stopped, yet he continued to push forward rather than retreat. That determination is a lesson in mental strength. It shows the human cost behind the game. His journey reflects courage. Under pressure, Fashanu's role in founding Kick It Out shows how pain can be transformed into purpose. Instead of remaining silent, he chose to fight for change. His actions helped lay the groundwork for today's anti-racism efforts. The campaign stands as part of his legacy. It represents hope born from hardship. Change often begins with those who suffered most. Modern football may look more inclusive, but Fashanu's experiences remind us why vigilance is still needed. Racism has not disappeared, it has only changed form. His story urges players and fans to remain vocal. Silence once allowed abuse to thrive. Speaking out now is essential. By sharing his experiences on public platforms, Fashanu ensured these stories reached new generations. He refused to let history be rewritten or in his honesty, he keeps uncomfortable truths alive. That bravery continues to educate and challenge audiences. It is an act of lasting impact. John Fashanu's legacy goes beyond football achievements. It lives in conversations about equality, respect, and accountability. His struggles helped shape a better future for others. Remembering his story honors those who endured in silence. It also challenges the sport to keep moving forward. His journey will always matter.
Sentindo agora, fiquei até meio surpreso, não esperava assim tão rápido. Mas já que estou aqui, né, vou viver a realidade.
Por que as pessoas te amam tanto?
É demais, é lindo isso.
Acho que a gente tem sorte de fazer a coisa que o brasileiro ama muito, que é jogar futebol. E a gente joga futebol.
Futebol moleque, futebol solto, futebol com cara de futebol.
Ronaldinho's story is often told through smiles, tricks, and moments of pure joy. He is remembered as football's ultimate entertainer, a player who seemed to treat the game like a playground and opponents like dance partners. But behind that joyful image lies a quieter, heavier story, one that unfolded over many years and left marks that highlights never show. Before we begin, if you enjoy deep football stories that go beyond goals and trophies and explore the real human experiences of legends, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories matter, and your support helps keep them alive. From the very start of his career, Ronaldinho carried an optimism that set him apart. He believed deeply in football as a universal language, something that could bring people together, beyond borders, cultures, and backgrounds. Growing up in Brazil, he was surrounded by diversity, rhythm, and joy, and that shaped his outlook on the world. When he arrived on the global stage, he brought that same spirit with him. His smile was not an act. It was a reflection of how he genuinely felt about the game and life itself. In his early years as a professional, Ronaldinho often spoke about how fame and success seemed to protect him from the uglier sides of football. In December 2004, shortly after being named FIFA World Player of the Year, he openly said that he had never personally been a victim of racism. At the time, he acknowledged that racism existed in football and described it as a scourge, but he believed he had somehow been spared. There was an innocence in those words, a hope that perhaps football's beauty could outweigh its darkness. That belief would not last forever. As Ronaldinho's career progressed, he began to see racism not as something distant, but as something that could erupt suddenly, violently, and publicly, even at the highest level of the game. The turning point did not come through an attack, aimed solely at him, but through witnessing the pain inflicted on someone he cared deeply about. Sometimes, seeing someone else suffer changes you more than suffering yourself. On February 25, 2006, Barcelona traveled to La Romareda to face Real Zaragoza. On paper, it was just another league match. In reality, it became one of the most emotionally charged nights of Ronaldinho's career. From the early minutes, Barcelona's striker Samuel Eto'o was subjected to relentless racist abuse from sections of the crowd. Monkey chants echoed through the stadium every time he touched the ball. What made it worse was the feeling of helplessness. The game went on. The noise continued. Ronaldinho could see it all unfolding. He watched his teammate endure insult after insult, knowing exactly what those sounds meant. Eto'o tried to focus on the match, to do what footballers are often told to do, which is ignore it and keep playing. But there is a limit to how much a person can endure before the weight becomes unbearable. As the minutes passed, that limit was reached in the 76th minute. The moment everyone remembers finally arrived. Overwhelmed and exhausted by the abuse, Samuel Eto'o walked toward the sideline, clearly intending to leave the pitch. He repeated the words, "No MS again," and again, no more. It was not just a protest. It was a breaking point. For a brief moment, the match stopped being about football and became about human dignity. Ronaldinho reacted instantly. He did not hesitate. He ran straight to Eto'o, placing his hands on his teammate's face, looking him in the eyes, trying to calm him, trying to hold him together. Cameras captured the moment, but no camera could fully capture the emotion. Ronaldinho pleaded with him to stay, not because the team needed him to finish the match, but because leaving under those circumstances would feel like defeat, not on the scoreboard, but in spirit, in that moment. Ronaldinho made a statement that went far beyond the game. He told Eto'o that if he left the pitch, he would go with him. Those words carried enormous weight. This was not just any player speaking. This was the best footballer in the world at the time, offering solidarity, at the cost of abandoning the match. It was a quiet but powerful act of unity, a refusal to accept that one player should suffer alone. Eventually, Eto'o stayed, persuaded by teammates and officials. The match continued, but the atmosphere remained poised. Later in the game, Barcelona were awarded a penalty. Ronaldinho stepped up to take it. As he placed the ball on the spot, the same section of the crowd that had targeted Eto'o redirected their abuse toward him. Monkey noises rang out again, now aimed at the man who had dared to show solidarity. In that moment, Ronaldinho faced a choice. He could shrink away, rush the kick, or allow the hatred to break his focus. Instead, he did what he had always done. He played football. He struck the penalty cleanly and scored. There was no exaggerated celebration, no mocking gesture. Instead, he ran straight to Samuel Eto'o and embraced him tightly. It was a celebration not of victory, but of shared pain and shared strength. That image of Ronaldinho holding Eto'o remains one of the most powerful anti-racism moments in modern football. It showed that resistance does not always come through shouting or confrontation. Sometimes, it comes through presence, through standing beside someone and refusing to let them face injustice alone. For Ronaldinho, that night marked a shift. He could no longer see racism as something happening around him. It was now part of his story too. Years later, another incident would remind him that fame offers no real protection. In September 2014, Ronaldinho joined the Mexican club Querétaro. His arrival was treated like a celebration. Fans packed the streets, media attention was intense, and the city buzzed with excitement. Yet even before he played his first match, ugliness surfaced. Traffic disruptions caused by Ronaldinho's presentation irritated some locals. Among them was Carlos Manuel Trevico Nanes, a former local official, who chose to express his frustration in the most offensive way possible. On Facebook, he posted a racist rant referring to Ronaldinho as an ape and a Brazilian monkey. The words spread quickly, shocking fans and exposing how casually racism could still appear. Even in moments of celebration for Ronaldinho, the incident was deeply sad. He had done nothing wrong. He had not even stepped onto the pitch. Yet he, who was reduced to a slur, his humanity dismissed with a few hateful words. Unlike some might have expected, Ronaldinho did not engage in a public argument or respond with anger. He remained silent, choosing dignity over confrontation. But his silence did not mean acceptance. The reaction from the public was overwhelming. Fans across Mexico rallied to defend him, launching a massive social media movement under the hashtag Todos Somos Sim iOS, meaning we are all apes. The message was clear. If one man is dehumanized, then everyone stands with him. The movement transformed an act of hate into a moment of unity, and Ronaldinho became the symbol of that response. Even without saying a word, incidents like Zaragoza and the slur in Mexico slowly changed Ronaldinho's perspective. The man who once believed he had been untouched by racism began to understand that silence was not always enough. He had seen the pain on Eto'o's face. He had felt the sting of public insult himself. The cumulative weight of those moments reshaped how he viewed his role in football and society. Over time, Ronaldinho moved from being a passive observer to an active supporter of anti-racism efforts. He worked alongside players like Thierry Henry, using their global profiles to promote messages of equality and respect. This was not a loud transformation. There were no dramatic speeches or constant media appearances. It was consistent, intentional, and sincere, much like Ronaldinho himself. What makes Ronaldinho's story unique is how it contrasts with his public image. Fans see the smile, the tricks, the joy, but joy does not mean ignorance. His ability to keep smiling, even after witnessing and experiencing racism, speaks to an extraordinary level of resilience. He refused to let hatred define him or steal his love for the game, yet it would be wrong to say these experiences did not affect him. Racism leaves marks, even when met with grace. It chips away at the idea that football is purely about talent and entertainment. It reminds players that no matter how good they are, some will still see them through the lens of prejudice. Ronaldinho's response was never about confrontation. It was about humanity, holding a teammate, embracing solidarity, letting actions speak louder than words. In a sport often driven by ego and rivalry, those moments stand out precisely because they are rare. Looking back, it becomes clear that Ronaldinho's legacy is not only about what he did with the ball, but about how he carried himself without it. He showed that you can resist hatred without losing kindness, that you can stand firm without becoming bitter. His story reminds us that even the most joyful figures in sport carry invisible burdens. Racism in football did not start with Ronaldinho and it did not end with him, but his experiences form an important chapter in the ongoing struggle. They show how racism can erupt suddenly, how it can target anyone, and how powerful solidarity can be in response. When fans remember Ronaldinho, they will always remember the smile, the flair, the magic. But beneath that magic lies a man who quietly faced cruelty, stood beside others in pain, and refused to let hate define his journey. His story is not one of victimhood but of dignity. In the end, Ronaldinho's career teaches us that football is more than a game of goals and trophies. It is a mirror of society, capable of both beauty and brutality. How players respond to that reality shapes their true legacy. Ronaldinho chose joy, solidarity, and resilience. And in doing so, he reminded the world that even in the face of hatred, humanity can still shine through. Even today, the moments Ronaldinho lived through continue to resonate with new generations of players and fans. Young footballers who watch clips of him smiling under pressure may not immediately see the weight he carried, but his experiences form part of a wider history that still shapes the game. Every time a player chooses to stand beside a teammate facing abuse, every time a crowd collectively rejects racist behavior, there is an echo of those earlier moments when silence was the norm and courage had to be personal. Ronaldinho's actions, though calm and understated, helped normalize solidarity at the highest level of football. Ultimately, Ronaldinho's journey reminds us that joy and pain can coexist, even in the same moment. The same man who danced past defenders and made stadiums laugh also stood still in the face of cruelty, choosing compassion over anger. His legacy is not diminished by the racism he encountered. It is strengthened by how he responded to it. In remembering Ronaldinho fully, we remember not only a footballing genius, but a human being who showed that dignity, empathy, and unity can endure even when the world tries to take them away.